All right, everybody. I'm glad to have you back on the blog this week and excited to announce and introduce a new to me author, maybe to you too, I don't know. But this is Henry O. Arnold. Hi, Henry.
Hello, Dina.
How
Thank
are
you for
you?
having me on today.
It's a pleasure. I'm glad to have you. I'm always excited to meet authors, people that I don't know, haven't connected with even outside of this on social media before. So I'm really excited to meet you and hear more about you and your writing. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that right now.
Let's do it. Let's
Turn it
do
over to
that.
you. Tell us what you want us to know about Henry O. Arnold.
Well, I come from a family of storytellers. My father was an actor and a writer and a teacher. My mother was an actor and then turned to journalism and was would write weekly stories for the papers here in Nashville. And interviews people for she was the food editor
Mm.
and continued to act for until they retired. And so the mantle in a way was passed on to myself and my sister, by the way. She's also an actor. And so I've just been doing this since professionally since 1970. The first play I was in was a Greek tragedy when I was 5 years old, the Euripides Medea, and so that experience gave me um, such a visceral, powerful experience of what human emotion and human choices are so dynamic in the art of storytelling that it stuck with me. It's probably one of my earliest memories in my life. And then fast forward to 1970, my father was cast in the role of Don Quixote in Man of La Mancha, and I got to play a small role in that production. And after that experience with my dad and with the that beautiful being able to participate in telling that beautiful story, I never looked back and said this was my life, professional life. So
Mm.
and then eventually a few years after that I began writing plays and so here I am today.
So, from your youngest memory as a child, you always wanted to be in theater as an
Right.
actor. And
Yes.
so how does that bring you into writing? How did that come about?
Well, I guess it's the love of language and the power that words have,
Mm.
and not just the words themselves, but the emotional values that we place on them as we say them. Because we go throughout our daily lives making choices that in some way satisfy our needs and desires, and we have obstacles every day that we must overcome in order to satisfy those needs and desires, whatever they may be. And so this is basically an art form of acting or in stage plays or film or literature. You are you're putting up that mirror to life in a sense in your art form. And so that's how I once I wrap my arms around a story, then I just make it as real as I can, that regardless of whether it's a historical fiction or a contemporary crime thriller or whatever genre I'm writing in, I want people to feel as if these characters not only speak to them, but they can identify with them.
Hmm. So how long ago did you write and publish your first novel?
The first novel was a collaboration with a gentleman named Bill Barton, and it was called Hometown Favorite: Contemporary Fiction of an NFL football player, young man coming out of high school and college and going into the NFL. But it's in a sense it's a modern day retelling of excuse me, a modern day retelling of the story of Job in the Bible, and that was published, I think, in 2008 or 9,
Mhm.
and so that was my first published novel.
That sounds relatable. I know lots
Yeah,
of people have gone through horrendous things in life, and they can feel like that they are living a Job type
yeah,
story. And
I know,
today, yeah, some rough stuff that people go through for sure.
absolutely.
So that was your first book. Now, did you continue to write in that specific genre, or have you
No, I
branched
didn't.
out?
Well, no, I wrote a nonfiction book called Cobble 24 that was published a couple of years after this first novel. That was about the kidnapping of 8 Western hostages by the Al Qaeda group
Hmm.
right before 9/11. And so a friend of mine was a documentary filmmaker, and he interviewed the several of those people, Westerners who were kidnapped, as well as some Afghan workers. And I was asked to put it into a book form. So that followed the first novel. But then I started pursuing these books that this historical fiction line called The Song of Prophets and Kings, because I was fascinated by the way the the Israelites moved from a theocracy that was dominated by Moses, and then after Moses, it moved to judges, and then eventually the final prophet and judge was Samuel, and his story really begins in the book of Ruth because those were his ancestors. But the fascinating story of the the juxtaposition of prophet and king, because this was Samuel ushered in the transition from a complete theocracy into the dual system of theocracy and monarchy, and the tension between these two forms of government, and where does God play in the lives of these people
Mhm.
um, as they try to govern the nation of Israel. So I just thought it was fascinating to um, jump into that and take a look at that, be historically correct and true to what the scripture what we find in the scriptures, but also what I what I call right within the silences, because we may know, or we do know from scripture, what the outcomes are in these different stories and circumstances. What we don't know is um, what the what was going on in the hearts and minds of these characters that people who know the Bible, they're familiar with,
Right.
and so that's what I enjoyed doing in creating these stories.
So you're focused right now on biblical fiction, where you're taking a true story from the Bible and presenting it to readers in a way that draws them in to that time period and helps, kind of like The Chosen. I don't know if you watched it.
Yes. Oh, yes. Right. I haven't seen all of it, but the episodes that I have seen, yes, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, exactly what they're doing. And I love how too in the Chosen series, how Jesus is portrayed and his sense of humor and
Right.
the laughter and the things that you don't see if you just read what's on the page
Right.
of the Bible. But then our imaginations can start to think about, well, what was he really like in everyday
Right.
life? And
Right.
yeah, so these stories
And we
are,
don't allow ourselves to enjoy what our imaginations can do for us in the in between of of the circumstances that we are familiar with as recorded in the scripture.
mhm. So if you didn't write biblical fiction, what genre would you turn to?
Well, I have turned to a contemporary thriller it's called, well, the series will be called The Mercy Seat, and it'll have a title for this first book that will be coming out in February.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that title will be. The publisher has not, and I have not discussed what that might be, but because the biblical fiction series has the overall title of the series, The Song of Prophets and Kings, but these first three novels have their own individual titles. And then there's a fourth one coming out in November. Um, but this contemporary thriller is about a former Marine chaplain. He and his family live in an inner city in an inner city community in a large metropolitan city, and the and the and bad things happen, Dina.
That sounds
he
about
gets
right.
into he gets into trouble.
Yeah. You can't have a novel without the character getting into
No,
trouble,
he
right?
gets into trouble. So, and I'm what I have. I guess I was inspired by my wife. She's my first reader, and so after she'd gone through several of these novels of the biblical fiction series, she said, "Why don't you write something you just make up?" And I went, "Write something about today that you just make up."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, honey, I'll see what I can do." And I just, I just started daydreaming, which is really my process in creating anything.
Yeah.
Just start daydreaming,
Mhm.
and Maxwell Crane, who is the main character, and his wife Kenda came into focus, and so I just started, you know, paying attention to them and what were they going to do, and how were they going to live their life with their children, teenage children, and I just tried to keep my fingers, hope my typing kept up with what I was imagining it in my
Yeah.
mind.
It's all those what ifs that are going on in an
Oh, I
author's
know.
mind. What if this
Yeah,
happened in this? And then what if
right.
it just
Yeah.
snowballs into, just, oh, I have a
And
story.
there's times when you go off into a rabbit hole, but you
Mhm.
try to put the brakes on and not get too far deep into the hole and
Yeah.
come back out.
Speaking of rabbit holes, I know a lot of people can fall into that doing research.
Right,
Now, especially with your biblical
right,
fiction books, I'm sure there's a lot of research that goes into that. So how
right.
do you
There is.
tackle that?
Well, I had a friend who teaches Old Testament history. He's a professor of Old Testament history at a Belmont University here in Nashville, and he gave me some books, and he said, "Here's start with these." And so I mean, I would say I'm a lay student of the Bible, so I read it a, a lot, not just for my spiritual life, but also for the research to do these type of stories.
Hmm.
And so the extra biblical historical accounts um, were so important to get, to try and get the cultures, excuse me, the cultures, not just of Israel and what it was going through, 3,000 years ago, but also the Canaanite cultures of that when they came into the land and tried to settle and conquer and all that. And so where were we at the time of Samuel's birth in relationship to the cultures around, to the culture of Israel, but also the cultures in the surrounding, country at that time.
Hmm.
So digging into that is was I felt like in a sense a literary archaeologist, because I could discover things without having to go out and dig in the ground, and although I hope someday I can do that. But it was just a wonderful wealth of information that I tried not to get overwhelmed by, but because I wanted to only to influence the characters and as they developed and what their mindset was in a time of whatever the circumstances might be in any one of this series of novels,
Mm-hmm.
because they would be greatly in, just as we are influenced by the cultures around us. um, so were they.
Do you plot out your stories ahead of time, or does it just come to you as you're writing it?
Well, yes and no. I tried to, well, I am true to the biblical accounts in the chronology in which they happened. However, the as I said, in writing in the silences, imagining what people were thinking and doing and leading up to a historical event in scripture, um, we don't know, because the writers, whoever was writing this, Samuel, and then probably his students taking over for him after his death. Um, we just don't know that. They don't, you know, they don't give us that information.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a section in there in First Samuel alone that uh there's like a 15-20 year gap between chapter 5 and chapter 6 or whatever it was. I can't remember. But and then there's some characters, that are completely made up,
Mm-hmm.
like Samuel's wife. Her name, I gave her the name of Shira, and we know they had two sons. So I'm assuming that Samuel was married, and I made her literally out of whole cloth, and as strong a figure in a romantic way as well as in a supportive way of her husband as prophet of Yahweh, that they were a team. And then they formed this prophet school. And so all of this is,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I took the liberty to create all of this in hopes of not only giving a reader a good story, but enhancing a reader's enjoyment of scripture
Mm-hmm.
as we know it.
Yeah. So obviously, your most recent release, it's called The Singer of Israel.
Right, right,
Okay. So obviously that's inspired by true events because it's from the
right,
Bible. So
right.
what inspired you to write this particular story from the Bible?
I guess there's we love to see stories. Um, we love to see stories that we can identify with, not just a character, but also circumstances. And while these circumstances in this particular series are 3,000 years old, I wanted to write it in such a way that it's not mythologized, that it's not, these characters are real and as identifiable um, as human beings as any human being in history or any human being in contemporary life. So for a David and a Michael, the daughter of Saul, their romantic relationship and and marriage, and then eventual um, him having to take flight from a father, King Saul, who wanted him dead. Um, all of these circumstances are you see this played out every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be able to create a fictional scenario that a reader could say, I know what it feels like to feel betrayed. I know what it feels like to feel love. I know what it feels like to have the camaraderie and companionship of good, dependable friends who have your back. I know what it's like to feel fear and courage to take risks and all of these things happen to the characters in my stories. And so if I can create them in such a way that creates that empathy for a reader that says, aha, I can identify with this female character, this male character, this set of circumstances, then and do it in an entertaining and inspiring way, then I feel like I've accomplished something.
Mhm. So I know as writers, we are hoping that our stories that we put out there are going to impact people as they read
Right.
them. Life change, inspiration, challenge to go deeper with God, all of those kind of things that we hope for
Absolutely.
when we're putting books out there. But what did God teach you while you were writing The Singer of Israel?
I'm not as smart as I think I am. It's very humbling to know that you have been given a little bit of a talent to tell a story, but yet you are not as talented as you might think you are.
Mm,
And I think that is a for me that comes down to I have to rely on the presence of God in my life in order to accomplish anything. So um, it's not like, okay, I've got this, God, you can take a break. It is, okay, God, you've given this to me. Now, don't don't leave me. Don't go.
yeah.
Come back.
Hmm.
And that the in a sense, the partnership, if I can use such a lame term, the partnership or the relationship that I feel like I've got with God as creator, he has given me the opportunity and the freedom to be a co-creator in this process. And that's a welcoming and freeing and
Hmm.
scary thing
Yes.
and mysterious, very
Absolutely.
mysterious. So, it's,
Well, somehow our time has slipped away.
oh,
As we are going to close this up right now, just answer this one last question, if you would. When a reader picks up The Singer of Israel and they turn that last page, close the back cover, they have finished reading it. What are you hoping that they are taking away from that story?
that they've never imagined these characters and these circumstances like that ever before. And that this is a new way of looking at these characters as well as these sets of circumstances and how relatable they are to their own life.
Amen.
Mm.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I can't believe our time has gone already. I'm like, where
Wow.
did the time go, right?
Yes.
Um, and
Yes.
I think I have in my notes that for your giveaway that you're offering, is it right that you're giving the series?
Whatever. I
Whatever you
can't
said?
remember. I whatever I said. Now it's out there in the world. So whatever I
Well,
said.
I can take it back. I can take it back.
No, 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 no.
All right, I'm gonna look
No.
on my sheet here right
Yeah, look
now.
on your sheet
I'm
because
gonna
I think
see.
Marissa is from the publisher Whitefire, may have
Mm,
set that up. Or
says I will give away the first 3 books in the series,
there we go.
paperback, to a U.S. winner.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. You'll let me know who that may be
I
at some
will. I
point.
will.
Yes. Right. Right. And
All
they
right.
can get they can go to my website, henryoarnold.com, and, read about these books and anything else that they'd like to,
Okay. I'll be adding all the links in the post
okay.
so everybody will know where
Great.
to find you.
Great.
Well, again, so nice to meet you, and thanks for sharing about your books and your writing. It's been a real joy.
Dina, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye now.